There are like 110 fintech companies in Hungary working or operational, either in the B2B or in B2C. And what the fintech do not have is the reach to the customers. That's why they need the large companies, service providers, banks. So what I say is that the fintech companies are developing, they're looking for partners. And from the other side, large companies side, they started to look for them to cooperate with.
Welcome to another episode of Inside the Vacuum, where we go through war stories of people founding fintechs, working in the vacuum of space and time to build something cool, something unique, and something that brings value to the world. So today I'm extremely happy to have Monika Nemeth, one of the co-founders of Fintech Zone in Hungary. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and Fintech Zone?
Sure. I'm Monika, and I started my career in telco, in the telco sector, telco industry. I worked for the largest or the leading telco companies in Hungary for over 20 years and worked in the regulatory department, and also in broadband and innovation part. And after some years working there and accomplishing several great projects or jobs, with my co-founder at Fintech Group, we started to be very much interested about payments and the payment sector and fintech. So we have almost 16 years of career being together. Then we went to the payment sector at T-City. That was a project which I liked very much. And there we learned a lot about how to do payments in store, like in the retail sector. That was the first step towards payment. And the second step was the Mobile Wallet Association, what was basically managed by my co-founder, who is Gábor Lama. And I was also working there as a consultant for international matters. So somehow after telecom, our interest moved to the payment sector and to fintech. And we decided to establish our own company for fintech, for consultancy, for how to do business in fintech. And that's how we founded Fintech Group. We work for basically all the companies in different sectors who wants to become a part in the renewing financial sector. We do consultancy for them. And as we decided to establish Fintech Group, we had a mission that whatever we learn in fintech, in finance, or everything in the world, we want to give or want to share it to other people. We are open to all people who wants to learn how the digital world works. So we decided to start or publish a blog, and we name it Fintech Zone. So Fintech Zone is an online blog, and we are the ones with some other experts or professionals in fintech or finance world who write our articles. And we try to open the people's eye to what fintech can mean to them, what digital finance can help them in their world. So we have a company, it's a fintech consultancy company, and the blog for the people, professionals from banks and for financial service providers as well.
So what was that transition like, coming in from the telco space now into payments and fintech? Was it similar? How was the transition?
Basically, it was a very smooth transition. It was because in the telco sector, in the final years in the telco industry, we worked on innovation, digital projects like doing smart city, like what you can do with the internet, how you can help a village to grow just because of having a new internet network. So we had very good projects and we had really fast growing things to learn. So the dynamism, the speediness of fintech and the new approaches, how to help people in life, that somehow was in our veins in the final years at the telecom sector. And also, if you look at the regulation, what happens in the world, like in global scale, the telecom sector was opened by the regulator almost 20 years ago. And when it was opened, that was something like similar. So the same happened in the financial sector. In telco, it was called New Regulatory Framework. In the financial industry, it's called PSD2. So basically, how the EU opened the market and the competition in the telco sector, basically the same happens now in the financial sector. And working at the regulatory and innovation part, doing digital projects and doing over-the-top services, business development in the telco sector, and seeing how the financial sector opens up, we found the similarities and we felt that we have to move to the finance sector because it is the next big thing, let's put it that way. And I really enjoyed the opening up the telco sector. That was a very good job. So the same happens in the finance. So we have the same very good feelings. I don't know how to express myself. The same excitement every day. And also the similarities, how the banks react to the regulators, how the fintech reacts, that very similar.
That's fascinating. Telcos were going through a massive change. There was lots of customer demand for change. And then the European Union came in, started to making changes. And now the same exact thing is happening in financial services. So were there any specific things that you really sort of learned in those early stages of telco, which you are now applying to finance?
During the telco liberalization, I was working at the largest telco company. I was in a very different position. And the business interest, what I had to represent, and the approach, what I had to look at the regulation was very much different than what I'm doing now. But I can use the experiences, I can use whatever I learned over there going for the largest telecom companies' interest towards the regulator and this kind of stuff. What I really learned out of those years is how you should approach a new regulation. I understand the standpoint or the way of thinking of the regulator. I understand how an incumbent works. I understand how the newcomers work and think. So this is the largest asset of the whole thing, is that I understand all the parties in the financial sector. And I can see like what can be the right step or the right approach. And where are the points where you have to make compromises, or where are the points where you should be kind of sticking on your own standpoint. So what I think I learned is how you can do your negotiations the best.
So it's almost like you learned how to play chess back in the day with telcos, and now you're just applying the rules of how you work with a king, how you work with a queen. Cool. So, I mean, one of the big things right now in the industry in fintech is really all about getting money from one place to another very quickly. Is instant payment something that's also happening in Hungary and growing the market right now?
I guess it's the one of the biggest thing in payments. What can happen or what could happen in Hungary? We do instant payment. The whole system was started in March 2nd, so almost 4 months ago. And, that was basically the largest investment in the banking sector in the past, 60, 70 years or so. I'm saying that because in Hungary, the instant payment system was created or developed a little bit different than from any other places in the world. In Hungary, that's a mandatory thing for the banks, for the Hungarian banks by law. So all the banks, at that 36 banks in Hungary, 36 banks had to do the same investment in the same or harmonized way. If you look at the time frame, because that was basically a deadline set by the law when it should be started. And the National Bank of Hungary and the Giro, the clearinghouse, they basically put together a nationwide project with all the banks included and all the relevant parties included in the project so that they can harmonize the whole infrastructure. So basically that was a huge stuff, and it started with success 4 months ago. And what we have ahead of us is to build up the market. And the regulator said that basically set up some basic services which are mandatory, like moving transfers, like instant transfer that has to be done from bank account to bank account or mobile number to mobile number, and also email and text number. So we have some proxies which are mandatory also to be able to send money to. And this is the basic services what all the banks in Hungary have to be able to provide. And all the banks in Hungary, they do it. So we have a very good base at this time. And basically the money have to reach the beneficiary within 5 seconds. So we have a technical requirement, which is 5 seconds for each bank transfers, and non-stop operation throughout the whole year. So that's a very good thing, a very huge thing. And this is what we are at this point. But additional value-added services, these are optional with a very strong advice from the National Bank of Hungary to do it, but they are not set in law, not set in regulation. And this is where the banks are working right now on. And you can develop value-added services on the top. You can use the background, the basic infrastructure, the speedness, and all the opportunities on the infrastructure. You have a pretty good cost base, and you can do value-added services on top. And if you look at it with PSD2, and I guess that's the only way you can look at instant payment, that you look in a complex way. And if you see instant payment is infrastructure, PSD2 gives the business model and opens up the market for competition. And if you look at both of them, then you see a whole range of services, what you can do, or you can provide, or you can develop. So I guess it is a little bit more important to work on the value-added services at this time.
This is really a proprietary Hungarian system for Hungarian banks and Hungarian businesses. Is that right?
This is a domestic system. But if you look at all the other countries in the Europe, almost everybody started with this, or there's, I guess there are 14 instant payment system in Europe. And at this time, all of them are national systems. Some of them can handle or can transfer different currencies. Hungary just handle forints at this time, Hungarian forints, but this is domestic at this time. I'm sure that you have heard about the European Payment Initiative, which was published a couple of weeks ago, in that 16 banks started to cooperate and building up a pan-European instant payment system. So there are initiatives to do a pan-European instant payment network.
How are the banks feeling about this?
So in Hungary, most of the banks, they say that they have their own APIs, they have their PSD2 APIs, and they meet the regulations. But in fact, if you try to connect to the APIs, very few of them are working properly. The reason behind that is most probably that they are not very much clear at this point about their business interest. And I guess that's everywhere in Europe. The situation is kind of the same. And regarding instant payment, it started like a regulatory project. And now they finished the regulatory side. And the banks here are working on the business case, how to do value-added services on that. We see at this time 3 banks in Hungary who offer QR code payment and request to pay. So out of the 36, at this time there are 3 which offers these optional but value-added services. The rest is still working on it.
So what's a good example of a fintech that will now have a massive impact on the end consumer in this new world?
I would say is that less companies develop solutions for the SMEs, like the small, medium companies. I have one example for SMEs. It's online billing. You do know that online billing is kind of a regulatory requirement in most countries. So an online billing company can provide a service to the users, like comparing the bank statement with their actual bills they issued or they got, or invoices they issued or they got. And so you don't have to go to your bank or to your bank account, but you can see how much money you have. You can see what bills or invoices were paid to you. And this can be pretty good to a small and medium and SME company, that they can see their bills or invoices paid right away. And they can see it in real time. If you look at IP or the instant payment, with instant payment, you get the money right away. With PSD2, you can see that you got the money in your online billing account. And also, if you got the money, you can issue your invoice right away. So the whole business procedure is kind of speeding up. And beside that, if you look at the way that you can think that like SAP or the large ERP systems expensive to small and medium companies, they are very much lagging behind regarding their decision-making systems.
This is interesting, because that's really, let me give you a parallel into how we work. So we're a development company that builds software, but a lot of what we do a lot of the value that we add to the customer isn't really in the code that is built, but rather the change of thinking that happens because they're now building software to support their business processes. So when we're talking to a customer, it's almost like we're and this might be a bad analogy, but it's almost like the building of new software is like a Trojan horse for bringing in a new way of thinking and reworking internal processes around this new capability of the software. Most people probably that are listening to this might not know that much about the Hungarian fintech scene. Is it now starting to sort of grow with this new regulation and these sort of things, or has it always been in growth over the past few years?
In Hungary, the fintech scene, there was an analysis or a survey from the Central Bank of Hungary They found over 100, something like 110 fintech companies in Hungary working or operational. They work either in the B2B or in B2C, so that's the total number. What I see is that the Hungarian market is not very big. We are only 9 or something million Hungarian people, so the market is pretty small. And what the fintech do not have is the reach to the customers. That's why they need the large companies. They need service providers, banks, or telcos to work with. And this is very good that this kind of cooperations have already started. And this kind of cooperation is supported by accelerators. It is kind of facilitated or enhanced by private or bank-owned incubators or accelerator companies as well. So what I see is that the fintech companies are developing, they're looking for partners, and from the other side, from the large companies side, they started to look for them to cooperate with. And if you look at the results, there are kind of 5 to 10 out of these 100 who we can say that they are really on the market. That means that they have all the licenses, they have either business customers or consumers, or they started to work on the market or introduce their services. If we go back to PSD2, there are 5 TPPs, like account information service providers that licensed in Hungary at this time. These are Hungarian companies. So this is, you can say it's not enough, but I can say is that it's okay. We are in a learning curve. 5 companies having AISP, that I guess that's okay.
I don't think it's a numbers race, right? Like, it's all about what survives. Building a business is difficult, and especially in a new field, it's absolutely something that should be praised to whoever makes it through and survives. So it's definitely great that this is a growing market. Do you see any sort of recurring challenges that they have to go through, or is it just building up a business?
It's always a challenge to build up the business. It's a very big challenge to learn how to work with large companies. And I guess that's one of the biggest challenges they have. The different working culture, the different way of thinking, how a product shall be developed, all this kind of stuff. So the regular problems when the elephant and the mouse starts to get know to each other. And also the regulators is in a learning curve, as I said. So understanding a fintech aspect, understanding a fintech approach to a service can be difficult for the regulator as well. So the challenges are meeting the regulation and not killing the innovation this way. And the other one is to reach the customers and to build up business.
And as you, I guess, alluded to, a lot of those early customers might be larger companies, and knowing how to work with them and really speak to all the important stakeholders and how to move things along is probably part of the challenge, right?
Absolutely. And one other thing is that the way the classical or type banks and the incumbent at telco work, or the large companies work, they work on products for different customer segment with different profit and loss responsibility. But their product development or that business development activity is usually not around the one customer. It's around money, and it's around products, and it's around systems, architectures, and businesses. So it's a completely different approach, what the fintech has. And when these two approaches have to meet or have to work together, that's different. And the fintechs sometimes fear that this cooperation is very slow, but the fintech usually don't have that much capital or liquidity to wait that much. So this is a very difficult thing, and I guess that's very good that there are accelerator companies or some of the consultants who step into the middle and somehow accelerate or speed up the way they work. They can talk to each other, they can work with each other, their approaches can get closer and closer and closer. So the different approach, the customer approach and the service or product type approach, that's also a challenge.
So the fintechs really are thinking about what's valuable for the end consumer, right? They're thinking about, like, how do I build a cool new app or maybe not even cool, just useful. Like you mentioned earlier, you talked about the SMEs, the smaller businesses. They really need something that gives them an overview of how much they're spending, where they're spending, where their money is going in and out, whether they've paid their invoices and that sort of thing. And really building around that idea, when these fintechs with ideas and actually working prototypes, working technology come to these larger banks or larger corporations, they're almost stuck in this limbo. They want to get this to customers, but the bank or corporation needs to look at it from a P&L perspective. So what's the sort of resolution for that? It's about extending their runway to adjust for that sort of timeline. Is that sort of what just needs to happen for these companies?
In my opinion, usually those banks can believe in products. I'm not sure that this is the right expression, believe, or when you really believe that this is going to work or this is the right way to do that, then sometimes you can go to your manager, convince them to have the same belief or to convince them that this is the right way, and you can have other benefits than money, like customer image or growth in customer number in 2 or 3 years or something like that, or social responsibility. So there are some other benefits than just money. And if you can convince the manager of a bank, then I guess this is one way these new fintech services can win, let's put it that way. And the other thing is that you adjust your BC, your business case, and you really try to get another year or so to make your profit expectations. I don't know which bank does what, but I guess the right way is the first one, to try to find some other benefits, and not try to find, but to see other benefits, to look for other benefits, because there are always some other benefits than just money if you're in the right way.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at this from a different industry that you're familiar with, which is telcos, for a long time it was all about the data and the minutes and the SMS, and text. But over time, there was almost like a shift, even in the physical stores of telcos around the world, where they converted from these like bank-like institutions where you came to a person and talked to them, to where most telcos now look like living rooms or kitchens or teenagers' bedrooms. It's all about the sort of value-added service of having that pipe. And now the value to the customer is not data, but rather it's their transactions. So it is actually a perfect shift. So out of what you've done so far as Fintech Group, are there any particular projects, or maybe even back from your telco days, that you're really proud of that you can sort of tell us about a bit?
At the telco, my favorite project was building broadband network to the villages, to the rural broadband project. That was a very, very difficult project. That was typically the one where there is no P&L, there is no profit. There was no business case which could work or could make the expectations of the company management. Even with EU money, it was that thing. But this was the time we could somehow draft that what's going to happen with a village when you have internet on that. And we could visualize the whole thing, and we win the green light from the management, and we started to build up the whole network. And we worked for more than 120 villages in Hungary. And that was about 3 years to build up the network. There was a time when the networks were ready. There was the time when we handed over the network to the rural governments. And there were the kids, and they were just waiting for us, who had a big truck with I don't know how many computers, like laptops in it. And all the kids, they just went to the truck, and they were just fighting for the spaces so that they could sit down. And we helped them how to start the computer, what to do with, how to play with it, how to look for information, what they wanted to know. And that was a really, really great feeling, that we could give joy, we could give some good thing to the people. And 2 years later, we got a letter from the mayor of the small village, and he said that he thanked us for providing internet to the village, because the people, the kids, they come back. And they come back after school, they come back from the university, and they start their own companies there. So the whole village started to live. And so that was really what I'm really proud of, because we were not just doing money for the company and profit for the owner, but we did something good for the people. So basically, that's from the telco sector. And from Fintech Group, what I really like in Fintech Group, business consultancy, that's great. Really working together with different people, working together with different professionals, understanding the aspects or the point of view or the standpoints of the banks and this kind of stuff. That's very good, and it's always exciting to talk about PSD2 or instant payment, what it can have, what opportunities it have to other people, and see that they just start thinking with you. They get out of the box of the routine, what they have on every day. Like in the bank, they have a very strict routine. And when we work with them and do workshops, and they just start to open, they get into the room, oh, this is just another routine meeting. And after half an hour or so, you see their eyes with joy and with excitement, and they start thinking with you, together with you, on how they can do a better service to the people and what they can do with PSD2 or instant payment, whatever. So this is very good to work with people and trying to change something what's very routine to a new thing.
You almost made me cry there with the story. Have you had any sort of cool new things that people have thought up with these sort of value for people with these fintechs? You say PSD2 instant payments. Like, have you had people come to you and say, like, this would be a cool idea that you can sort of share with us? Something that doesn't exist yet, but really could be out there?
Yes, sure. We do mentoring with my co-founder partner, and they come to us with very bright eyes and with smile and with huge enthusiasm. They tell us what they have in mind, and they ask us if it is okay with PSD2, if it is okay with regulation, if it is a good idea, how to bring it to the market, whom they can work with. So we always find people, or they find us, who are very, very enthusiastic of doing something new, something great. We think with them, work with them, help them, that's what support them. Also, what I really like is that 1 or 2 conferences a year, Fintech Show and Paytech Show. Fintech Show is kind of a broader stuff. We discuss not only payments, but different other aspects. And whenever you are at the show and you have 60-something speakers, and they give you energy, they give you new thoughts, living and speedy stuff, organizing the show, being there, understanding the speakers, help them get ready to the conference. And when they are ready and they start talking, they always have something new, some new thoughts, some new ideas. So this whole thing is kind of very speedy, very quick, very funny sometimes.
So if there could be anything that people would just take one thing away from this podcast, what would that be? What would you like put up on a billboard in your hometown and say, like, this is the thing you need to know. This is the thing you should all think about.
Okay. So just one thing to take away or to take home from this podcast, I would say, is that the payments industry and this financial industry is much more excited than I ever thought. And it's transforming very rapidly. And look at the opportunities. There are always opportunities in IP or in PSD2 in the regulation. Never stop. Look for the opportunities and be open-minded and look for partnerships. I always believe in partnerships. I'm not an lonely or an alone person. So this is one message. The other thing, what would I put on the billboard? I would say is that always be yourself and never lie to yourself. And if you do so, even in the long term, it will have its benefit. If you are yourself, it will make you different and relevant and authentic to other people because they will feel that you give yourself. This is how the new career opportunities will find you. This is how your friends will stay with you.
Thank you very much for your time today. This was really exciting. I never really saw the connection between telco and where we are today with finance, and how this is really the new opportunity really for a lot of companies. And if people want to find you, want to find Fintech Zone, where can they do that?
We have a website that's called fintechzone.hu. And there's a hello@fintechzone.hu.
Exciting. We'll link that in the comments of this podcast so people can link to it directly. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot and have a good day. Thank you.
I would like to thank everyone for listening. We're back soon with another war story from inside the vacuum.